Perhaps no mother in this world could ever imagine facing the moment when she is forced to leave her own daughter's home with cruel words thrown at her, saying she is nothing but a burden, just another mouth to feed. This was the same mother who had spent her entire youth raising, protecting, and sacrificing every morsel of food and every piece of clothing for her child. And yet, when old age crept in, what she received in return was cold indifference, so harsh it pierced deeper than any wound. Rejected by her very own flesh and blood, she walked out of that house in silence. No complaints, no curses, only red, swollen eyes and a heart heavy with sorrow. At first glance, this story seems destined to end in tears, with an elderly woman abandoned, left to wander in search of a place to stay. But life, at times, twists in ways no one can predict. This mother was not the kind of woman to easily surrender to fate. Behind that frail and quiet figure, she carried a secret her daughter never even suspected, a secret that, once revealed, had the power to shift the entire balance of authority within the family. There are people who spend their lives quietly saving, quietly preparing for the future, and one day, all that effort transforms into an unexpected strength. The mother in this story was one of them. She left her daughter's home, but not in complete destitution. On the contrary, she had prepared for a step so bold, so astonishing, that anyone who heard of it would be left speechless. A move that was at once cold and heavy with the bitter ache of a mother's love betrayed. Would that action make her daughter regret what she had done? Would it restore justice? Or would it leave behind another scar that could never heal? The answer lies in the chapters that follow, where we will all come to realize, sometimes, parents are far stronger than we ever imagine. Share your thoughts in the comments after hearing this story, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next meaningful tale. The mother walked away from that house in silence. That afternoon's sky was heavy with gloom, the sunlight fading as autumn winds swept through old narrow streets. She carried a small cloth bag, holding only a few sets of clothes and some personal belongings. To the neighbors, it looked like nothing more than an old woman moving out to rent a modest place. But only her heart knew the truth. This was no ordinary departure. It was the moment of being cast aside by her very own child. Any mother knows, the greatest pain is not poverty nor illness. It is when your children no longer need you. She had once believed that no matter how hard old age might be, she would still have a home to return to, still hear the voice of her child calling, "Mother." But now, all she had was cruel words and a door slammed shut in her face. And yet, unlike what many would imagine, she did not collapse on the pavement in tears. She did not rush to the neighbors to complain, nor did she seek pity from relatives. Instead, she walked slowly, head slightly raised, her eyes shining with a quiet determination that few could perceive. Deep within her, a fire had long been burning, the fire of dignity, of pride, and of a plan she had kept hidden for many years. For behind her frail and weathered appearance, she was not empty-handed. After a lifetime of labor, she had learned to save every coin, to set aside every small amount. She never spent wastefully, never chased after vanity. To others, she was merely a frugal old woman, living simply. But in truth, she held in her hands a sum of money powerful enough to change her fate. In her younger years, she once heard her late husband say, "In life, only with money will your voice be heard. No one listens to the penniless, not even family." Those words had echoed in her mind for decades, and so, year after year, she quietly saved, treating it as her own safety net. And today, as her daughter cast her out, she realized that preparation had become her ultimate weapon. She rented a small room on the outskirts of the city, not luxurious, not spacious, but quiet enough for her to begin planning. Those first days of living alone were heavy with sorrow. At night, when dogs barked in the alley, she would remember lying beside her grandchild, listening to her daughter's gentle reminders. But now, all of it was only memory. Instead of weeping, she pressed her lips tightly and pulled out an old notebook, filled with decades of meticulous savings. The pages were yellowed, the handwriting shaky, yet every number bore witness to her endurance and patience. She calculated, reviewed again and again, until she was certain she had enough to do something few could have imagined, buying the very building where her daughter lived. At first, the thought flashed by like lightning. But the more she considered it, the more sense it made. Not out of hatred nor simple revenge, but to prove a point, that a mother, even in old age, can still rise and make her mark. And above all, she wanted her daughter to understand that underestimating one's parents is the gravest mistake a child can make. So she began her search. In the days that followed, neighbors saw her bent over newspapers, scanning property listings, or stepping into real estate offices. They thought she was merely curious, an old woman killing time. But in truth, she was carefully watching, inquiring, waiting, until finally, the opportunity arrived. The very building where her daughter lived was about to be put up for sale. Her heart pounded. This was the moment fate had placed directly into her hands, the chance to turn everything around. News about the building's soon changing hands spread quickly among the real estate circles. The mother first heard it from a young employee at the agency she often visited to ask questions. At first, the man laughed, thinking the old lady was merely curious, just passing time in her twilight years. After all, how could a silver-haired woman in simple clothes ever dream of purchasing a multi-story building in the heart of the city? But when she quietly placed a thick savings book, stamped over and over with the seal of the bank, right in front of him, his attitude changed instantly. You truly want to buy this?" His voice trembled. She simply nodded. In her eyes was a firmness no one could deny. In the days that followed, she embarked on a journey she herself never imagined she would experience. The journey of becoming a real estate negotiator. In the mornings, she wore her conical hat, carried her cloth bag, and quietly took the bus to meet lawyers and ask about procedures. In the afternoons, she sat in small cafes across from the building's owner, listening as he spoke of the difficulties of managing tenants, of the financial pressures weighing so heavily that he had no choice but to sell quickly. The owner had no idea that the woman before him was anything more than an ordinary old lady. He looked at her thin hands, her deeply etched wrinkles, and assumed she knew nothing of the market. Yet, the longer they spoke, the more surprised he became. She never argued, never rushed, but simply asked the right questions at the right time. Are all the legal documents transparent? Are there any unresolved debts tied to this property? What is the current monthly rental income? Each question pierced like a needle into the armor of the confident seller. Behind that gentle appearance lay a wisdom sharpened through decades of hard, relentless living. Negotiations stretched on for weeks. At first, the owner scoffed at the price she offered, calling it too low. But as time went on, his desperation grew. He needed to sell. And then, one afternoon, the contract was signed. Her old, trembling hand held the pen, but her heart was steady as stone. In that moment, she officially became the owner of the very building where her daughter and family lived. The news spread like wildfire among the neighbors. Some doubted it, some shook their heads in disbelief. When her daughter heard the truth, she was nearly paralyzed with shock. The very woman she had cast out, the mother she had called a burden, now owned the apartment she lived in. The day the mother returned to the building as its new owner was unforgettable. The entire neighborhood gathered in the courtyard, whispering and pointing. She walked slowly, still as simply dressed as ever, yet each step carried an aura of authority. Her daughter stood hidden among the crowd, her face stiff, unable to utter a word. The mother did not shout, nor did she revel in triumph. Her eyes simply passed coldly over her daughter before she declared, her voice firm and commanding. "Starting next month, all rents will be tripled. Anyone unable to pay must leave. This decision is final." The courtyard fell utterly silent. People exchanged glances, stunned, whispering under their breath. That such sharp words could come from an old woman was almost unbelievable. Yet the papers were clear, the law on her side. No one dared to object. It was only then that her daughter rushed forward, her voice shaking. "Mother, why are you doing this? Do you want my family to suffer?" The old woman turned, locking eyes with her frantic daughter, and answered each word with weight. Suffer? I suffered for years raising you. Did you ever once think of me? You called me a burden. Now, you will know what it truly means to carry a burden. Her words struck like a blade straight into her daughter's heart. The crowd stood frozen, no one daring to interfere. The fragile, submissive image of a mother was gone. Before them stood a woman of resilience, of strength, reclaiming the respect that had once been denied her. And in that moment, her daughter finally realized the greatest mistake of her life was not a lack of money, but the loss of love, the priceless treasure no apartment, no building could ever replace. The day the mother left her daughter's house, a light drizzle began to fall. Her eyes were heavy with sorrow, yet there was not a trace of resentment. She understood that clinging on would only make her daughter more irritated, and so she chose silence. Step by slow step, with a worn cloth bag slung over her shoulder, she walked away, not knowing where her next destination would be. Yet deep inside her heart smoldered a strength she herself had not realized still existed after so many years. Few people knew that ever since her husband passed away early, she had carried the burden of raising her child alone, working as a laborer, selling small odds and ends at the market. Every bit of meager profit she earned, she never wasted. Instead, she carefully tucked it away into an old savings book. Many times, people saw her in simple clothes, with nothing more than a pair of plastic sandals worn down at the heels and a faded long dress. Outsiders assumed she lived in poverty. In truth, she had quietly built up a sum of money large enough to change her fate. Then one day, news reached her ears. The building where her daughter's family lived was being put up for sale. The current owner, drowning in debt, needed to sell urgently, and the asking price, though high, required immediate cash payment. For most people, this was an impossible opportunity, far out of reach. But for her, each heartbeat thudded with excitement. Could this be destiny, handing her a chance to step out of the shadows of contempt? In her small rented room, she spread the old savings book across the table. Every number on those yellowed pages was the embodiment of sweat, of silent endurance, of sacrifices no one had ever noticed. She let out a deep sigh, then slowly took the pen and signed the contract. Her hand trembled, not from fear but from emotion. In all her years of being a mother, she had never imagined she would one day become the landlady of an entire building, but now it was real. On the day the documents were notarized, she wore the neatest clothes she owned and even polished her old shoes until they shone. The real estate agent looked at her in astonishment, an elderly, modest woman who could instantly pay such an enormous sum. She offered no explanations, no boasts. In her calm gaze was the quiet dignity of a lifelong acquainted with hardship, someone simply turning to a new chapter. The news spread quickly. When her daughter received the official notice that the building she rented was now owned by the very mother she had once driven out, she was stunned into silence. The harsh words she had once spat, "You're just a burden, another mouth to feed," suddenly cut back into her own heart like a sharp blade. But the shock didn't end there. The mother did not merely purchase the building. She announced a decision that left everyone speechless. Rents would be tripled. The day she came to deliver the news, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers. The mother climbed the stairs slowly, her posture calm yet proud. The daughter opened the door, froze at the sight of her, caught between shame and outrage. "Mother, why is it you?" Her voice trembled, her eyes darting away. The mother gave a faint smile, but it was no longer the soft, submissive smile of the past. "Yes, I am the new owner of this building. Starting next month, rent will be tripled." Her daughter's entire family fell silent. The husband glanced at his wife. The children stared wide-eyed in confusion. The daughter felt the ground beneath her feet collapse. The very person she had once despised, once driven away without mercy, now held their lives in her hands. The news spread further, and neighbors gossiped endlessly. Who would have thought that kind old lady had such strength? This is karma. An ungrateful child must pay the price. In that moment, the mother seemed transformed into someone else, not the weary, downtrodden woman of before, but a proud figure who dared to stand up and reclaim her dignity. The decision to triple the rent was not merely a financial move. It was a resounding slap across the face of her daughter's selfishness and ingratitude. And so, the family was forced to confront a cruel truth. The one they had dismissed as a burden had become their foundation, the very keeper of the keys to the roof over their heads. After the shock that seemed almost impossible to believe, the days that followed in the daughter's small apartment were heavy with a suffocating silence, as if a giant stone weighed down the entire household. The daughter, once so proud and accustomed to living with calculations and control, now had to sit and reflect on every harsh word she had ever spoken to her mother. Each time she recalled the moment her mother quietly carried her worn bag and walked away, her eyes red but without a single word of reproach, it was as if a sharp blade pierced straight through her heart. At first, anger consumed her. She even convinced herself that her mother was taking revenge. Yet the more she thought about it, the clearer it became that the humiliation she felt did not come from her mother's sternness, but from her own ingratitude. That sudden blow was like a mirror held before her face, reflecting all the coldness and selfishness she had long chosen to ignore. On sleepless nights, her mind wandered back to childhood memories. She remembered rainy days when her mother trudged through storm and mud to bring home a few bundles of vegetables. She remembered meals with just one small piece of fish, when her mother pretended she didn't like fish so she could give it all to her child. She remembered being gravely ill, when her mother stayed awake all night fanning away mosquitoes, watching fevers, preparing medicine, worrying over every breath. These images replayed like a slow-motion film, filling her with unbearable remorse. Meanwhile, the mother remained composed, her demeanor steady as always. She neither hurried to force reconciliation nor displayed any sense of triumph over her daughter's collapse. On the contrary, she simply went about her life, sometimes visiting the building for inspections, sometimes stopping to chat with neighbors. And it was precisely that calmness that deepened the daughter's shame and guilt. One day, the mother came by and stood outside her daughter's door. The little grandchild rushed out, clung to her legs, and said, "Grandma, please don't be mad at my mommy." That innocent plea was like a dagger piercing the young mother's chest. She broke down, falling to her knees before her own mother, sobbing uncontrollably as the words tumbled out. "I was wrong. I was truly wrong. I was selfish, blind, ungrateful. Please forgive me, Mother." The mother said nothing. She simply placed her hand gently on her daughter's head, stroking her hair as she used to when the girl was small. It was not an easy forgiveness, but rather the eternal love of a mother, a love that never extinguishes, even after being deeply wounded. This story, if it had ended as nothing more than an act of revenge, would not have carried such weight. The true meaning lies in the transformation. The daughter, once ungrateful, finally awakened to the priceless value of her mother, and it is that awakening that makes the story profound. Life often works this way. Many of us only realize the worth of a person when we are on the brink of losing them. Yet, fortunately, the daughter in this story still had the chance to make amends. Not everyone is granted such mercy. There are children who only weep bitterly before their mother's grave. But by then, it is already far too late. Parents do not need their children to repay them with wealth, nor do they expect flowery words. What they truly long for is care, respect, and a touch of sincere gratitude. Just that alone is enough to ease the countless hardships they have endured. After that day, she knelt and wept at her mother's feet. The daughter began to change for real. From then on, in that small home, family meals were no longer weighed down by silence. She took the initiative to invite her mother to move back in with them, but the mother only smiled. "I'm old now. I'm used to living simply, and being on my own feels comfortable enough. But I'll always stay close by, just a few streets away. Whenever you need me, just call." That answer brought both relief and sorrow. Relief because her mother had not turned her back completely. Sorrow because she knew her mother had once longed to live under the same roof with her children and grandchildren, only to be pushed away by her own daughter. It was a wound that would never fully heal, and she understood she would spend her life trying to make amends. Time passed, and the daughter gradually learned how to care for her mother, no longer seeing her as a burden. Each weekend, the family would gather around the dinner table, listening as the old woman recounted the struggles of earlier years. The grandchildren huddled around her, captivated by stories that seemed ordinary yet carried profound lessons. The daughter would sit quietly, sometimes holding her mother's hand, as though afraid time might steal away such precious moments. And so, from her own story, she drew a bitter lesson. If you fail to cherish your parents while they are alive, you will pay with tears too late to matter. This lesson she passed on to her children, hoping they would never repeat the mistakes she once made. This story reaches beyond a single family. It serves as a wake-up call to all of us, as children. In the rush of life, in the struggle for survival, we sometimes carelessly overlook family bonds. We lose our patience when our parents repeat themselves. We snap at them when they appear forgetful. We forget that these annoyances are but a tiny price to pay for their continued presence in our lives. One day, when our parents' hair has turned snow white, when their trembling hands can no longer hold ours, when their fading eyes no longer clearly see the faces of their grandchildren, only then will we truly grasp the meaning of loss. But by then, will it still be in time? Parents may spend a lifetime toiling, a lifetime sacrificing, all for their children's happiness. They do not need us to shower them with riches. All they ask is for a hug, a kind question, a small gesture of genuine care. Do not wait until their portrait rests on an altar to cry in regret. By then, our parents will no longer hear our apologies. The story of the mother buying back the building and forcing her daughter to face the truth is not merely a dramatic twist. It is a reminder. Parents are not as weak as we think. Behind that frail frame lies a lifetime of resilience, wisdom, and boundless love. And that love, though scarred, still chooses silent forgiveness. Never test the patience of your parents. Never look down on them. Because when parents choose to rise in silence, the consequences may haunt you for a lifetime. More importantly, learn to value them while you still can, so that each day is not a day wasted. Money can buy a house, but it cannot buy a home. Power may bring temporary admiration, but only filial piety can bring lasting peace. Parents are the roots, the unshakable support that never changes, no matter how the outside world turns its back. And so, love them, respect them, and be grateful, starting today. Do not wait until tomorrow, because some things, once lost, can never be regained.